People who are a positive force for change in the world aren't superhuman. They're just like everybody else. They've just managed to overcome their fear and self-doubt. Are you ready to do that? You will be after today's episode of Disruptor.
From the edges of publishing, it's Disruptor, celebrating the rebels, mavericks, and weirdos of the publishing industry and encouraging each of you to disrupt in your own way. Now here's your host, John Bard.
Greetings, one and all. I'm John Bard. Welcome to Disruptor. This is episode 4 with author and coach Andrea Woolf on having the courage to disrupt. I've been in the publishing world for close to 30 years, and I've seen a lot of things change, but maybe they haven't changed fast enough. And so I asked the question, are there disruptors out there? Are there people and companies that are really changing things in publishing, pushing us into the future, throwing out the old rule book and creating a new one all their own? I went in search of that, and I found them. And every week here on Disruptor, you'll meet them. Welcome to the journey. It's time to disrupt. Today's episode of Disruptor is brought to you by Writing Blueprints, the breakthrough step-by-step system for writers that creates truly great books. To learn more about the most disruptive way ever to become a successful author, visit writingblueprints.com and use the code DISRUPT to save 10% off everything on the site. The writing world has been shaken. Meet the earthquake. Go to writingblueprints.com and use the code DISRUPT to save 10%. Writing Blueprints. This is how you write a book. We have a special edition of Disruptor for you today that I think you're really going to enjoy. If you're a Disruptor listener, it tells me that you're interested in, well, disrupting things. But changing the world, or even changing your small portion of it, requires a level of courage that sometimes can be difficult to summon. Being criticized, having haters, feeling like you're not enough. These are common feelings that hold us back from taking our true place in the world. I want you to disrupt. And so I invited my friend Andrea Woolf to come here to give us all the courage to disrupt. Andrea is a renowned business and personal coach and the author of Ignite Your Life. And she's one of the smartest people I know when it comes to overcoming self-doubt and making things happen. Today, let's all become disruptors and get the courage we need to change the publishing industry and the world. Thank you for joining us. It's Andrea Woolf with us today on a special edition of Disruptor, and we are going to talk about the courage to disrupt. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. Great to be here with you, John.
Yeah.
Really excited about the topic.
So let's get right into the topic. The idea of disrupting is one of those things that sounds like fun. It sounds like something we should all be doing, but it's actually a pretty scary proposition, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it can be, depending on where you're coming from in your quest to disrupt. Like so often, what gets in the way is this wonderful thing called the mind. Like, I got this great idea. I want to make this change in the world. I want to bring this new, innovative, fill in the blank product, idea, book, you name it. And then you get to thinking really less than empowering thoughts like, who do I think I am? Like, I've never done this before. I don't know how to fill in the blank. Well, of course, that comes from a couple of things. Number one, summoning the courage, stepping into it. You know, one of the ways to learn how to swim is to get into water that's beyond your depth, not to drown, but to actually trust your body, let the oxygen in. Oxygen's very powerful for the mind as well as swimming. And then like float, and then from there soar with the eagles. I'm mixing my metaphors here, but you know, there's nothing like stepping into something that's extremely uncomfortable, which disruption truly must be. If you're disrupting, it's something, you know, you want to like help people see things differently, experience something different, take a stand for something they believe in, like powerfully. And so all of that is about change. So when it comes down to it, to answer your question, we what I often find in my work with amazing people is there's a zest for disruption and a fear of change all at the same time, which often leads to paralysis.
And making it worse, I think, is people's fear of being singled out. Of course, when you're disrupting, the goal is in a way to be singled out, but that's a pretty scary idea for most of us.
Yeah. Well, what can come up is, experiences from the past, for example, where you were singled out. So let's say a teacher singled you out because you gave what is considered a silly answer. And they didn't realize the damage they were doing by singling you out. It could be classmates. Kids are brutal with each other, yeah? Well, they can be, hopefully not always. But, it's like getting singled out to be picked on. It's trauma that can pull right into adulthood. And then you may hold back as an adult. You may have some amazing contribution to make. And you're remembering that moment where you were picked on by one person or a group of people. So standing out from the crowd. Look, I happen to be a woman. And I happen to be, on top of it, a recovering Brit. Imagine that. Originally from England, where it's even in the modern world, there is still a certain being appropriate, being, fitting in. And people behave like that to not stand out from the crowd. I can remember, I had great parents. My father, who I recently lost, I remember so well when I was a little girl, he went on a quest with me to help me stop talking with my hands. Imagine that. It's just the British kind of way of being to be more. That was absolutely mission impossible because I'm much too juicy for that. It never worked. But, it's subtle. And so as moving into adulthood, so often women with similar experiences, be seen and not heard, be a good girl, this stuff. And I'm sure much of this applies to men as well. In adulthood, where we now don't want to stand out. We don't want to risk fill in the blank, whatever it is, being ridiculed, being squished. I can remember experiences in my business experience before I became this wonderful thing that I'm now doing for a long, long time, coaching, right? Business and personal coaching. But in the corporate world, there was a way to be. And so if you were really outspoken, you get labeled shrill or, some words I don't want to say in this interview, but not complimentary, right? And there would be an attempt to kind of manage you. So the male voice was much more dominant. Honestly, to this day, it still is. Even in the Me Too movement and everything that's going on, there is a way of being that is expected of women that is not to shine in the world. Now, luckily, there are many icons who have paved the way, both in the spoken word, in the written word, you name it. So it's not like it doesn't exist at all. There are amazing women, for example, like Oprah, who in her day broke the sound barrier more than once, right? Getting onto television. She was a no one, and she just had this voice that resonated, and then on out into the publishing world, you name it. So, one of the key elements to actually successfully overcoming anything is to have a vision, is to really give yourself permission to dream and dream big. Because when you anchor to that, all the fears, all the head trash, all that noise in your head, whether it's yours or you've inherited from others, you can overcome it. If your dream makes your tummy tingle, the idea of that, whether it's getting your one book out into the world, into the hands of children, adults, whoever you're writing for, if it's a way of getting your voice out through social media, through talks, through contributions that you have in the world, products and programs, whatever it is, how you want to make a difference, having a vision before you get into action will really, 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 really help. That's, I think, 5 real is. Because just setting off without one, almost always happens is you get caught up in the tactical, and then you don't know how to, and then you get stuck, and then it goes nowhere. So having something to anchor to that really will support you, and see if you can get some support around your vision, even if it's just a few people, to energize you and your vision, will make all the difference in the world to becoming the disruptor you dream of becoming. There's
a really good article by Tim Ferriss, and I'll link to it in the show notes for folks who are listening. His guide to dealing with haters, and he said something there that really stuck with me that I think that that people who wish to disrupt maybe need to think about. He said that it's the 95% of people who don't get what you're trying to do aren't the important ones. It's the 5% of the people who do. So it's about changing your gaze and your ears, taking them away from the naysayers and focusing entirely on the people who look at whatever it is that you're trying to disrupt with and say, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Everything else is just noise. And I think that a lot of what you're talking about is the stuff that's going to come from the 95%. It's the people who are going to look at you and say, well, that's not appropriate, or I don't like that, or look at what does she think, who does she think she is? And the idea of just simply ignoring them and focusing entirely on the people who understand what you're doing. I think that's a profound notion.
It is very profound. So often, if we've had, I call it early training in people pleasing, what we tend to do is give it all our effort to pleasing people where it's never going to work. And so that translates when we go forward into adulthood, where let's say you have a business and you have identified your ideal prospects, but you keep going after the ones that aren't your ideal. You keep going after the difficult, the hard ones, so I love this idea. By the way, I love that idea, by the way, of really going after your peeps, the ones who appreciate your message, who want to come on board with it, who want to hear more from you. So I have a really simple tip here. Really, may I share it?
Please.
Okay, good. So I have 2 hands, like most of us. And let's say this hand, my right hand, represents easy, and your left hand represents hard. So whenever I'm out talking to people, giving talks, doing trainings, whatever, I do this with everyone. And so I ask the following question. If you knew you had choice in the matter, whatever the matter is, right? Starting a new business, doing a thing, whatever, taking a next step. If you knew you had, about a relationship, if you knew you had choice in the matter, would you choose for that to be, whatever that is, the thing that you're choosing, to be easy or hard? And I have asked this question of thousands of people, and I've only had one person choose hard. It was a woman in one of my audiences, and she misunderstood the question. So what we forget is that we have choice. So choosing who are your peeps. That may come from like taking steps and discovering who your ideal target is. But once you know it and they're starting to receive you, that is the pathway to massive success, is really going for more of them because they want to hear from you. I mean, this is the easier part in life, right? It's much easier and it's actually much more effective.
So that might be the best solution for what is really the 800-pound gorilla, which is fear of criticism, fear of people laughing at you, not being kind to you because you want to disrupt. Perhaps the answer is simply, if they don't get your idea, what they have to say simply doesn't matter. And that, I guess, sounds good in the abstract, but still, it's hard to get criticized, isn't it?
Well, it depends where you go with it. In other words, what you make it mean. So there's something in coaching called reframing. So you're taking it on as one way, like they hate me, I'll never amount to anything. You're going all over the planet, like letting it in, right? In a negative way, not in a positive way. So let's say we have the power to reframe, and I assert that we always do. Yes. So you could reframe it to, for example, and I love things that make you giggle. So how about this? I'm onto something. I'm onto something. I'm truly disrupting. If I'm evoking this much emotion out there, it means I'm getting to the ones who are not a good fit with me, which means ... There are those the other side of this, if I can just rise above the criticism, who actually are my peeps. So like really negative reaction is great if you say it is. Embrace it, because the odds of pleasing everyone all the time are slim to none. When I say it like that, wouldn't you agree?
Sure.
Pleasing everyone all the time. Impossible. This is a great big world out there. You're looking for people who like run with what you're here to share, to ignite in the world. That's who you are here to serve, not the ones who are the opposite of that.
What about the idea, and I think we all have it, that deep down, who am I to do this because I'm a fraud?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that a classic human concept?
It is. And honestly, the bigger the game you play, the more that's going to come up. Andrea, enlightened Andrea, who've been through tons and tons of trainings and personal growth and challenging myself, it still sometimes comes up. That may shock you, right? What do you mean it comes up for you? It does, but I'm now playing a bigger game. So once you realize that the voice is going to come for a visit, I call those negative voices in your head gremlins, by the way, little negative animals. When it comes up, you can, with a little bit of discipline, practice, you can notice it before it takes you down, thank them for sharing, and give them a one-way ticket to Timbuktu. Now, does it mean they're never ever going to come back again? Maybe, maybe not. Because the more you, like any exercise, the more you exercise this muscle, the quicker you can overcome the impact of negative thoughts, whether they're yours or others. That makes sense?
Yeah, sure.
Great. So when I'm working with clients, I take them to the ultimate. If they're going for something big with another human being on the outside of themselves. So I help them imagine that person's saying to them, "You're ugly and you smell." Right? So it makes them laugh, because what are the odds of anyone saying that rather than no? No. If you can live through no, you can actually live through anything. So preparing for it, being ready for it, knowing that you have something to do with the voice that comes up like, who do you think you are? Right? Right? Well, who I am is I'm here to make a difference. This is who I serve. They're waiting for me out there. Just flip the coin. Say the exact opposite to yourself. Be your own biggest, best friend, biggest champion. Or find someone like me to say it to you, outside of you. But you understand, it is so important to not get sucked into that negative vortex, because it will absolutely paralyze you.
And that's probably where getting some early allies helps too. I start identifying your peeps, as you call them, and you start feeling that way, well, you could look at your reflection, instead of looking at your reflection in the eyes of people who don't get it, look at your reflection in the eyes of people who do. And I think that gives you validation that, yeah, maybe I still feel like I'm a fraud, but I'm a fraud with a really good idea right now.
Well, exactly. So as make sure you're getting out in the world, because staying home alone, contemplating what I call the lint in your navel, is a conversation with yourself, and you may or may not be inspiring yourself. But let's say you have an idea for a next thing you want to bring to the world. Okay, so when you're out and about, just test it. And just share, be authentic, right? It's early stages. I have this idea that I want to bring to the world, and especially woman to woman, I'm speaking as a woman here, really, or woman to man, I do it with men too, right? Is really look into their eyes, feel their heart, see the reaction, right? If they're touched, moved, and inspired by what you're sharing, if they love it, really let it in, because you're onto something. You're getting validation. But if you keep yourself like a Ziploc bag, sealed in for freshness until you've got everything figured out. I'm speaking to my fellow perfectionists out there because I am a recovering one. You never fully get over it. That's what I mean by recovering. So you may want to have it all figured out before you tell anyone, before you share with anyone. And I have to really push through that because I love to have it all figured out, ideally first, but it doesn't actually work. The much better way is to be sharing with people out in the world, your peeps, your ideal peeps, not your haters, the ideal peeps, and just see how they react to it. And it may amaze you. It may amaze you. Yes, because there's nowhere near enough inspiration going on in the world right now.
Right.
There's room for us disruptors. We are needed now. Right now. Yeah.
Well, let's follow up on that and talk about women, because we live in an age now where women are really stepping up and claiming their space.
We are.
After many years of not really being able to fully. So this is an opportunity now, but what are a couple of things that typically impact women who think about disrupting? You mentioned a few things earlier, but what are some of the big things that they have to overcome, and what are some ways that they can start overcoming that?
Well, a big one is I'm already overwhelmed, right? So whether you have a job as a woman, whether you have your own business, even if, and especially if you're a full-time mom, right? Right. All of those roles that as women we do hold. Keeping the family together, not just immediate, but extended, working, playing, you name it. Oh, I'm fitting this one more dream into all that. How am I going to do that? So overwhelm is very, very common with women. Very, very common. So then from overwhelm, sort of thinking themselves into paralysis around all of it, and then not taking a single step, understandably, right? So, so that's a very big one. A really big one is, and I'll go deeper with it. It's this idea of presence. So I have a thing called standing in your power that I work with all women. I mean, I have worked with some extremely successful women who are really high-level executives in companies, owners of very big businesses. And I coach them around leadership and communication in exactly this area, because it is not intuitive for us to literally stand in our power, be a force to be reckoned with in the world, our way, right? Not the masculine way. Often women find themselves competing like men in the business world, and we get exhausted. That exhausts us. So another way, I would assert the most effective feminine way, is to stand in our power, meaning really get in touch with your heart. Be heart-centered, coming from love versus competitive anything. Yes? Just heart open, standing in your power, believing in yourself, right? In all humility, no ego involved in this. What shifts when women show up like this is, it's confusing at first for men. And I say this with great love and respect for men, right? Absolute, this is not anti-male. This is empowering women. But this is where I'm coming from, yeah? And so as you know, I am birthing Women of Impact. And what this is all about, from this idea of having an empowering presence in the world, is about what I call shifting the global conversation. So now this is my big vision. When I was challenging before, have a very big vision. So everyone take a breath, because underneath my very big vision is the vision of world peace. World peace. In the face of the world going crazy right now, right? With autocratic leaders popping up all over the world. Okay, so in the face of that, Andrea is saying world peace is possible. And here's how it's going to happen. When more women start showing up, standing in their power, being women, authentic women, what will happen is the global conversation will shift. Right now, it's extremely masculine. Wars can break out at any moment all over the world, the way it's going right now. However, we almost always seek to understand. We connect through communication. We seek to, collaborate. We speak more collaboratively, the feminine way. So when more women are finding their voice, and it's rippling on out more out into the world, because we're all rippling all the time, whether it's positive or negative, we're all rippling. So when more women are rippling, what will happen is major shift. And it's already, as you said, starting to happen. There's such a huge contrast. It's obvious right now with the masculine way of communicating and the female. It's crystal clear. It couldn't be clearer right now. And my promise to men is you're actually going to enjoy this much more. You will enjoy life much more this way, and also find yourself with the women in your life. It just, transforming completely. But that's another whole conversation.
So let's create a scenario here. You're somewhere, you're at a hotel, you're at a conference, you're somewhere, and you run across a person who has your book, perhaps knows who you are, comes up and says, I want to disrupt. I have an idea, but I just don't know if I can do it. You're in an elevator with them. You have 60 seconds to give them your best advice, to get them excited. What do you tell them?
Okay, here we go. Ready? So, thank you for bumping into me today, and here we go. All right, you ready? Get their position first, right? So, you can do anything you believe you can. So, step one is believe in yourself. Like, take it on. Put signs up on your mirrors, wherever you look, the refrigerator. I believe I can, fill in the blank. Then you can, once you got that handled, it just comes down to, I can do this, right? But it starts with you believing that you can. So then what's your big vision? Write it down. Throw it down. Messy, don't worry about organizing. Bullet points are great because they're easy to organize afterwards. So, right, capture your big vision so it starts to become real, right? If you just keep it in your head, it's a lonely, dark place. So write it down. Get excited about it. Permission to get excited. Most people are walking around half asleep. Get zesty with it. Start to share it. Watch what happens when you're sharing it. Let go of trying to convince anyone and go for the ones that really get excited by your vision and say, I'm growing this vision. Can I show you the next thing? They're going to say yes. They're going to want to hear it. Do something. Get something going, because waiting until you got it all figured out is such a trap. So get something going. Gather a small group in your home. Just get a conversation going. Create a little program. Do something to get it going. And so it starts to have a life of its own above and beyond you. Makes sense? Bring it to life before you got it all figured out. Totally counterintuitive.
Great. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to disrupt. So I have one final question for you. Before we get that, let me tell folks, and again, it'll be in the show notes, Andrea has very kindly offered to give an entire copy of her book away to any Disruptor listener, the ebook version of it. The link is below. It is also publishingdisruptor.com/ignite. And you can go there and you can get it. And also, if people want to learn more about you and about what you're up to and Women of Impact, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
AndreaWoolf.com is my website. And my email, more immediate, is my email. Please email me, Andrea@AndreaWoolf.com.
And it's 2 O's in Wolf, like Virginia. So it's WOOLF. Andrea@AndreaWoolf.com. Final question. Who's your favorite disruptor in history? And it could be someone who's alive today or somebody from the past.
Yeah, that's such a great question. Like, there's a list.
Get one. That's the rules here at Disruptor.
Yeah, is Oprah.
Okay.
Oprah. She has changed so much in her lifetime. She's overcome. She's from being molested as a child, and she spoke out about it, took huge courage, opened up all kinds of conversations that didn't exist before, all the way through to her amazing business empire and her generosity in the world. Her message is empowering globally. She's dazzling. Oprah.
Great choice.
Yeah.
Andrea, thank you. You've given us so much to work with today, and I know you've inspired all of our listeners now to go out and disrupt and create some real change. So thank you so much for that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Great being with you, John.
Today's episode of Disruptor was brought to you by Writing Blueprints, the breakthrough step-by-step system for writers that creates truly great books. To learn more about the most disruptive way ever to become a successful author, visit writingblueprints.com and use the code DISRUPT to save 10% off everything on the site. The writing world has been shaken. Meet the earthquake. Go to writingblueprints.com and use the code DISRUPT to save 10%. Writing Blueprints. This is how you write a book.
For show notes and videos, go to disruptcast.online. And to start a disruption of your own, visit writingblueprints.com to discover the most innovative and coolest way ever to write a great book. We'll be back next week. Until then, go forth and disrupt.